Everybody knows what these are, but do you know all the different types and all the history of it? Odds are you probably don't, which is why today on the Gear Locker, we're going to be talking about the different jungle boot variations and the lineage throughout the Vietnam War. Now, before we get into the boots in my collection, let's talk about some of the rare ones that I don't really have personally. Obviously, I don't have those McVie SOG ones with the molded foot pattern in the bottom sole. And unfortunately, I don't have the first pattern. But let's talk about the first patterns real quick. There's a little bit of discrepancy as to when these were exactly introduced to advisors and those in Southeast Asia. Whether this was 1960 or 1962, those are kind of the two dates I've seen thrown around. But they were the start, and they were the standard design for jungle boots here on after. A little bit different than the Okinawa boots and some of the other boots used prior to. These had a black leather lower and an OG cotton canvas upper, with a leather band going up the rear strap of it as well as on the top, all for reinforcement. These were the first boots that introduced the Vibram style direct molded sole, which is why in some circles you'll see them called boots DMS, direct molded sole, and they lacked some distinct features that are common on other ones. These boots were not really used by infantrymen whatsoever. These were often used by advisors and are most commonly seen there, because not long after they introduced Type 2, or the second pattern of jungle boots. And here is a beautiful set. These boots were produced in 1964 to 1966, at least with some of the latest examples that we've seen. And they have a few key differences from that first pattern. Primarily, it is the change from leather to nylon for this back strap and this top reinforcement strap here. These boots still feature the cotton canvas upper with a leather lower and the DMS Vibram style sole. This particular one was manufactured by Beta, although other companies like CIC or Welco also produce jungle boots very commonly. Welco's name later changed to Rose Search. And this was one of the first that was more widely issued in Vietnam. A lot of infantry troops started hitting the ground in 1965, and this would be the style of boot that the massive majority of them used during this very early war period. However, these were not the most common boots in Vietnam. While the design stayed the same all throughout the war, the third patterns are the big hitters here. Let's keep one of these second patterns out so we can see the difference. But this is a lovely, well-used set of third pattern jungle boots. Key things you're going to notice. Number one, the DMS, direct molded sole, is still present. Flush drain holes, the same number of eyelets, and the nylon upper and rear strap. However, there's an additional piece of nylon that is sewn around the ankle for ankle support. This is an incredible addition to these jungle boots and one that would be retained throughout the rest of their use. These third pattern jungle boots were produced around November 1965 to 1968 with this exact same style, direct molded sole and all. In the production of these third patterns, they started to notice something that was a necessary addition for soldiers who were serving in Vietnam. Punji sticks were rampant, and many soldiers would have sharp bamboo and other objects insert right through the sole and into their foot, which is why they developed a spike protective plate, which is a metal plate that goes right along the bottom of the shoe so that if something did puncture through this rubber, it would be stopped at that metal plate, thus saving the foot of the soldier. And this change to the spike protective boot did happen sometime between then. Again, that 1965 to 1968 timeframe. More likely later than earlier. Yet again, there was still one major change that needed to happen to get these to where they are today. And that comes in the sole. In 1966, a certain type of jungle boot was tested in Panama with a sole that was very unique. The design had been around since the 40s. However, this is the first time the Army was really testing them. So 85 boots were sent over to Panama between February and June of 1966 and were tested for their ability to push mud out from the soles, therefore leading to better traction. And that is the introduction of the Panama sole jungle boot. However, these did not make it to Vietnam for years. In 1968, these were tested specifically with the 9th Infantry Division. And of course, other units did receive them afterwards, but these soles proved to be a huge success. And what's really neat is this pair that I have here is from 1967, June of 1967. Whether this was one of those initial test pieces or one of the very early batches, which I believe it is, I think June 1967 is the earliest of the production, these are still pretty cool nonetheless. Again, notice the stark difference between the Vibram sole and the Panama sole. Here is a pair from 1970. These guaranteed never made it to Vietnam. There was such a large production of jungle boots throughout the many years of the war that you can still see the Vibram soles even as late as 1970. This change happened around 1969, where the Panama sole was standardized. So these Panama soles did not show up much at all. And this style of boot was used well throughout the 80s and 90s and even later, primarily in the 80s, with things like the invasion of Grenada and Panama. So now let's talk quickly about what you want to look for if you are looking for jungle boots to use for your Vietnam impression. I'm going to bring these bad boys back up because not only do they look like the boots that were used in Vietnam, they are. These are just very worn in. I got these for a killer deal. And I'll probably keep them like this. I won't be using these boots. But the first thing you're going to want to look for, something that is safe throughout the vast majority of the war, are those Vibram soles. The thing is, you're probably not going to want to use originals. Originals like this are harder and harder to come by day, and they get very expensive, especially for ones in good condition. And truthfully, not a lot of manufacturers make Vibram sole jungle boots that are reproductions. All of the Rothko ones, or some of the modern McRae or Miltech or whatever other brands you're going to find out there, are all Panama sole. And each of them either have quality issues or farbisms. So I would recommend looking for high quality manufacturers. I don't believe Pike Brothers is manufacturing their jungle boots anymore, which is unfortunate because they were some of the best out there for those Vibram soles. And a lot of people do buy the What Price Glory boots, but they have a lot of issues with the soles coming right off. For a boot that's meant to make it through tough environments like the jungles of Vietnam, having something that, even though it is a replica boot, is not withstanding a lot of the rigors even for weekend reenactments, not too great. I don't personally have experience with them because I've heard a lot of people not having good experiences with them. Some people did. I've seen a sole come right off during a Bay event. So it's not going to be my cup of tea. But a pair of boots that I do recommend you find are ones from the 80s, but not just any kind. These jungle boots right here are probably some of the closest you're going to find that are not going to break the bank, and you're not going to feel bad about breaking them. These jungle boots are reproductions, but those with Vibram soles. These were made in Korea, again in the 1980s, and they are absolutely fantastic for using and beating up at reenactments. I have a couple pairs of these that I've used for years, and the only issue I had with them was a minor blowout here on another pair of mine, which just needed to be glued and tacked back in. Otherwise, these things work beautifully. When I'm prone or kneeling or walking or getting any photos taken, seeing this kind of sole just elevates the picture a little bit more. If someone's looking close enough or the light catches it, they may see this little hump here, which is pretty much the only farbism that are on these aside from some of the color material, but they're pretty good otherwise. Here's my recommendation. When you go on eBay or wherever you're searching, don't look up Jungle Boot Korea. Look up generic jungle boot and scour those listings. Key things to notice are, one, this little hump right here, as well as on the inner sole, you'll see a Korea in gold. It's like a tan sole with some gold on it, but that's kind of what you're gonna wanna look for. These things are fantastic to take and beat up in reenactments. I've never paid more than 60 bucks for a pair of them, and I don't feel bad about it one bit. Because with enough love, use, and actually rucking and using it on the field, your Korea-style reproduction jungle boots can look good like originals. As always, nothing's gonna beat originals, but actually using it in the field, which is what every single one of you should be doing, don't be a basement reenactor. Getting a repro is going to be a good way to go. So with that being said, let me know what you guys use for your jungle boots, whether they're repros or real, what you got them for. I'm curious to hear your experiences in the comments below. As always, this is the Gear Locker. Thank you so much. Wear boots and actually use them by going to a reenactment or a Bay event. This is the Gear Locker. I think I may have already said that, but we'll see you guys in the next one.